Cool. All right. So we'll talk about the Google API leak and learn what was discovered in terms of how the search algorithm works. Obviously, we won't get the entirely full picture, but so many SEOs around the world have unpacked this and gone into depth and analyzed every single factor in that code leak to figure out what was, what can be gleaned, what can be learned from how Google works in terms of ranking sites, and what can we do in the future to actually improve our own sites, and if for agencies, improve the sites of our clients. So let's get started. So in this masterclass, we're going to go through all the different main high-level points. We're not going to go into technical details because we want to make it quite easy, but I'll give you some guidance as to like some action points that you can start applying. And a lot of these you may or may not already know because they're kind of best practices. But the good thing is, because of this leak, we've kind of confirmed that these indeed are some of the key factors around ranking. All right, so the key overview. So it wasn't actually leaked by a person. It was actually leaked by a bot named Yoshicode Bot on GitHub. And GitHub is kind of like a hub for coders where they can like upload their code and stuff. Around mid-March this year. So it got leaked on there. And basically it was an accidental, obviously, commit. So commit is like when a developer publishes a piece of code on GitHub, for example, or anywhere. So it wasn't a hack, it wasn't a whistleblower, anything like that. And it was discovered by a person called Erfan Azimi, and he discovered this on GitHub, and he's like, whoa, what's this? And the actual leak consisted of over 2,500 documents with over 14,000 attributes or features of Google's internal API. So if you don't know what API stands for, it's basically acronym for Application Programming Interface, a way for computers, software to speak to another software using a specific protocol. So it makes it so basically, yeah, it's a language and a way for two or more softwares to communicate with each other. And so this leak provides new and valuable insights into Google's internal processes, how it works, and also some of the terminology that Google might use that we're not aware of because we never were privy to that until it got accidentally leaked. So that gives us a bit more insight even into how it works, which is really great. So of course, Google discovered this and they didn't really comment too much about it. But they removed it, funny enough, like over a month, just under a month later, which is interesting that it was up there for a bit longer. But obviously everyone had access to it, found it, people downloaded it. So now it's just been unpacked since then. All right, so I categorized these into different sections based on what they are. So we're going to be talking about the traffic and click metrics side of it. So there's a thing called nav boost, and this nav boost is basically a crucial ranking factor that's derived from the Google Chrome click data. So every time any user uses Google Chrome and they're browsing on different sites and stuff, Google actually tracks those clicks, and that kind of goes into its database to figure out as part of its algorithm. So it's interesting, but it's been confirmed. Yeah, so they do kind of track the clicks on there, and it's part of a ranking factor called nav boost. And it also measures various click metrics and uses site-wide, so authority signals, including traffic, browser traffic from Chrome. So all of these things go into play with the things. So one of the actions that you can do is to improve your website site design and the architecture, like how you structure it with the different pages, the hierarchy, how you link to different pages. And the better site design you can do in terms of user experience, in terms of structure, in terms of logical arrangements and all of that, that will really benefit from the nav boost ranking factor. So I definitely put some more thought into that, not just the basics, which is, okay, here I have a piece of content or page. How do I optimize this for a keyword? It's a bit more site-wide than it is just looking at it at a page-by-page basis. Okay, so a few more things. The click metrics should be giving more attention as they're actually used as diagnostic features for Google as well, but obviously they've been using it for some of the search API as well. And they also measure content effort and significant content updates. So what this means is content effort is their way of kind of measuring how much time and effort and resources has gone into creating a piece of content. So if it's like generated purely by AI and it's a copy paste job, obviously that's very low content effort and it might not get as much credibility or authority than something that has been like really researched, and maybe someone wrote a document, wrote an article from their personal experience, and that's more effort involved, obviously. And also the significant content updates, that's basically like you created a blog post or an article or page, and then you go back a few weeks or a few months or a year or two later and then update that content. But it's quite a significant update. So you might change quite a lot of things. You might have added quite a bit as well. So it does measure that quite a bit. Now, when I refer to any attributes, these are like the attributes in the code base, and the 14,000 plus attributes. So I've picked out a few here that relate to some of these categories that we're going through. And these kind of give us hints as to what Google's looking for in the back end. So total clicks attribute. So this suggests a correlation between the page traffic and the link value. So let's say you have a page and you're getting a lot of traffic to that one page. So the link from that page is worth a lot more than a page that has hardly any traffic. So traffic does play a big factor into that. So that's why it's really important when you create amazing content to rank it high so you get lots of organic traffic to it. Or even if you have lots of backlinks from trusted sources and you get traffic from there, that traffic is really valuable, and the links from those pages are really valuable. So also, if you have an email list, let's say you have a newsletter database or whatnot, it's important to encourage clicks to the website by providing less information in the actual email and more on the website. So instead of like, let's say you published a blog post, have like a summary or even just say what you're going to learn in that blog post in the email, and then people can click on that to actually read the full article. Like really build them up, build the desire for reading that content, and then they have to click and go to the website. And that's going to generate additional traffic that will make that page more valuable. Content and quality. So the content really should be focused and strategically expanded with focus on like author expertise. So Google, again, is focusing more and more on original content and opinions from specific industry experts and whatnot. So it would be really important when you do have a page of content on a specific topic to, give your opinion on it, or if you're the expert, or find an industry or multiple industry experts and get their opinions on it. So it's, unique content, and also, plays in personal experience as well. So that's important. Originality should be prioritized over long form content for certain queries. So long form content is usually content like 1,500 words or more. So obviously Google is preferring like really original content with opinions. That's why we see Reddit getting a lot of traffic and a lot of rankings these days, because it's original, user-focused, user experience, opinions, and information, rather than a generic blog article that, you can copy and paste from some AI generated tool that's pretty much the same from one to the next kind of thing. So it needs, ideally, original content is better, and that's more valuable because why would someone go to your site over a competitor's? Well, because your site contains original content that your competitors can't actually create because it's from a specific industry expert or from your personal experience or whatnot. Consistency in the dates across all the metadata is crucial. So when you're, let's say, and this kind of goes down to what happened in the past with manipulating dates and things, is that people published some blog articles and then they changed the dates to make it look more new and fresh. But then Google obviously knows that there's multiple date points that they can check in the code, and they'll see inconsistency, and they know that that's been kind of changed and manipulated. So ideally, don't kind of change the dates for the sake of that. When you publish content, it's out there, it's live. Google knows that it's been published at that date. So make sure it's just consistent in the metadata. In other words, don't try to manipulate it. So focus also on updating content regularly to maintain the freshness and the high effort score. So Google will look at how much effort you put into content, has its proprietary ways of actually calculating that through some algorithms. And yeah, the more effort and originality you can put in and the more relevance to your audience, the better. Oh, and I also want to mention, if you guys have any questions as we go through, please put in the chat so that at the end of this masterclass, we can go through and I can answer as many as possible. So some more content and quality. Google records various related attributes for the content freshness. So some of these attributes, like date, byline date, syntactic date, and semantic date, these are some of the attributes that were found in the code base. These actually highlight the importance of the consistent date information. So this is actually backed up by what was found in the code leak, which is really insightful. So another action is to optimize the headings of pages and write content that gets clicks and impressions. Make sure you update the content frequently if necessary. Let's say the industry changes, if you need to, maybe you add a bit more information over time, and also make sure that your content is of a consistent quality on your site. And that's really important, not just like so a few very high quality pieces and the rest is just generic, boring stuff. Consider hiring experienced authors with strong Google index presence. So this kind of comes down to the industry expert. So if you are in a specific industry, see if you can interview some industry experts, maybe publish a blog post about it or have them guest post on your site. And ideally, experts who already have lots of high-ranked content on Google and have established themselves on social media and a presence that Google already knows this is a trusted source. Penalties and demotions. So toxic backlinks or backlinks that are considered spammy or low quality, they're identified and penalized through specific feature in the API. And Google generally penalizes poor navigation, so low user experience, irrelevant links, user dissatisfaction. So Google can track that in different ways. For example, low engagement rate. Someone lands on a page and they leave after 5 seconds because it wasn't relevant to them, or they go to a page but they don't interact with it, or there's so many different things, like maybe there's a lot of 404 errors and users get frustrated and then leave, things like that. Spam scores include gibberish scores, phrase anchor spam penalty, trend spam, and keyword stuffing score. So you can kind of get a sense based on the names of these attributes of what Google's looking for. So like just like generated content that isn't, doesn't even make sense to the user. It's more for like trying to manipulate the search engines. trying to manipulate the anchor text of links, trying to create content that's just purely trends just so you can get rankings, stuffing in keywords to try and manipulate the search engines, which doesn't even work anyways. All of these things kind of are hints of what not to do. So the action here, improve the navigation for your site, make it super easy for users to navigate, find the information they're looking for. Make sure that the links, both internal and external, that you include in content, that they're useful, that they're valuable to the user, and relevant. And then try to remove any spammy or low quality or irrelevant backlinks, and then focus on creating highly credible backlinks from trustworthy sources in your industry or on the topics that you talk about mostly. Okay, a few other things. So there's a few various algorithmic penalties that were detailed in there, including exact match domains, product review sites, and potentially for sites with poor navigation experiences. So way back in the early 2000s, it was possible to buy a domain name with exact match keyword phrase, and you'd be ranking the next moment and all happy, you'd get a lot of traffic. But not long after Google started cracking down on that, it became more advanced, and now the domains hardly mean anything in terms of having keywords in there. It's more important to have a memorable, brand-focused domain. So if you're trying to get domains that are exact match, it's just not good, and it could actually hurt your SEO. Product review sites, I think Google doesn't like those too much, where sites just on product reviews. And then obviously poor navigation. So because users will just get frustrated and they won't know what to do or where to look, and then your engagement score goes down and bounce rates go up and whatnot. Toxic backlinks and blog copycat score are recognized by Google. So if someone has another blog and they basically copy and paste, basically stealing content or make it pretty much the same as the main authoritative site, again, these are all spammy practices. But interestingly, this is what Google does. It just tracks all of this. Outlinking is recognized only in connection to spam scores and not as a positive ranking factor. So what that really basically means, if you have a piece of content and you're linking to an external resource, as long as it's not spammy or completely irrelevant or low quality, it's fine. It doesn't really affect your ranking. But if you're linked to spammy sources and stuff like that, obviously that could lead to negative ranking. So you just want to focus on, like I said, useful, valuable, relevant links. So avoid buying exact match domains, like I said, focus on user experience and high quality original content. So a lot of this boils down to the same thing, but it's kind of proven that this is what Google is looking for now with this leak. Site structure and user experience. So internal anchor text is quite significant, and even if its impact on rankings isn't fully clear based on the leak, so Google is looking at the anchor text for internal links and how varied it is, how relevant it is, how useful it is for the users. So it's really important when you're building internal links on your site to connect related articles, on the same level of hierarchy, above, to the parent page, the child pages, and make sure that the anchor text is relevant to the page that it's linking to, and mix it up, change it up so that it's not always the same keyword phrase, because then that looks a bit suspicious. So link important pages from high traffic pages and not just the home page. So it needs to be we've all probably used Wikipedia and know how densely linked that is, but it's actually useful because it highlights certain concepts and certain names and places and whatnot because it has pages on that. And that internal linking is really useful because it creates a really in basically intricate web where users can find relevant information that they're looking for. So think of doing internal linking like that on your site. Another action is to implement content silos for better relevance and local SEO. So content silos is kind of having a main topic and then there's subtopics underneath, but in a hierarchy. So it could be like a category, there could be subcategories underneath, and then it could be child pages underneath that. And then you would interlink between those. And that's really helpful because it not only allows users to navigate between them and discover more relevant content, but allows, let's say, any link equity that was built up there through backlinks to easily flow to other pages and boost their rankings over time. Another action is to eliminate poorly performing pages to avoid negative impacts on the site-wide score. So if you have any pages on your site that aren't really doing well in terms of engagement, that hardly get any traffic, that, you know, just performing poorly in general, just get rid of them, because overall it could affect the overall site score. So it's important to kind of do like digital gardening on your site, basically weeding out some of the low performing pages and then watering and taking care of the ones that actually are getting a lot of traffic. So updating those more frequently. Linking and authority. So Google considers the ratio of branded search volume to links, and a component of the Panda algorithm, which happened many, many years ago. But basically, Panda has to do with like the quality of the content and penalizing sites with thin or hardly any content or duplicate content. Sites with disproportionate link volumes compared to branded searches may be flagged, indicating problem with site credibility or authenticity. So basically, in other words, you want to have more traffic from Google search, from social media, things like that, rather than referral links that could be spammy and are bringing in artificial traffic. So you want to be an established brand. So you want people to be searching your business or your brand name in Google. And that by definition shows Google that people actually know your business and are looking for it actively, which kind of has built-in trust with it. Rather than, you know, nobody searching your website or brand name. And that means pretty much nobody knows about it, but you're getting traffic from other means, and that could be like a red flag for Google. Link relevance and traffic should be prioritized over volume. So this goes back to basic practices, which is build high quality, relevant backlinks from authoritative, credible sources. So you want to, instead of having like 100 links for the same effort, why not build, you know, 10 really, really great links from amazing sources rather than 100 from like mediocre sites that won't add to that much credibility. Links from websites in the same country as the target site may carry more weight. And this boils down to more local SEO or national SEO. So if you have a business that's, let's say, in the USA, it'd be better to get backlinks from websites or businesses in the USA. If you're expanding out and branching into different countries, let's say and you translated your site in that country's language, it's important to start building up backlinks for that alternative site in that other country so you can get more backlink equity, and it carries more weight anyways. So it's kind of common sense, but sometimes you kind of have to think of it in terms of how do I want to build this up, this context up, this website context? Am I going to build it in this country and build up backlinks in here, or am I going to build it over here, or do both at the same time? Google tags links from high quality news sites using the encoded news anchor data attribute. And this tagging actually implies a higher value for links from credible news sources. So it actually kind of puts it in its own category. So let's say you get a link from, I don't know, BBC in the UK. I mean, that's huge credibility because it's, really trusted. But let's say you have some other news sites, and these are, in Google's eyes, seen as trusted. So it's kind of put into its own category, and these links are worth a lot more than other types of links. So build backlinks from credible news sources. And I know it's easier said than done, but if you ever get the chance through like a really great PR agency, or through, some original content or research, or that is picked up by these news sites, and you're interviewed, that's an amazing opportunity to get those links. Okay, so a bit more on linking and authority. So the content surrounding a link helps define its relevance. So when you attributes like context to, full left context, and full right context are used to assess the link's context. So let's say you have an anchor text in a piece of content. The anchor text itself gives a hint as to what that link, that page is through that link, but also Google looks at around that link to assess what it's about. So any text after it, any text before it. So that explains how Google can, to a certain extent, understand what the link is about, even though the anchor text might be click here now, or learn more here, or something generic like that. Because around that, it might be talking about specific topic, and then Google knows, oh, click here means, oh, learn more about, I don't know, technical SEO, because it was talking about that earlier. The attribute anchor mismatched emotion suggests the motions for links that do not match in relevance between the source and the target. So Google likely ignores links from content that it deems irrelevant to the target page. So again, it's really important to link between pages as if they're related and not like something completely different. So that's why building content silos and creating hierarchical structures in your site is really important, because then you can easily link between them and create closely knit relationships between those pieces of content, rather than something completely different and then linking to that. It might not be worth that much, that link, in Google's eyes. The page rank ends attribute emphasizes the importance of proximity to trusted sites. So in this context, proximity means relevance. So how closely related is this site to your site in terms of industry, in terms of topics it talks about? And so it's important to obviously link from and link to sites that relate to your industry, to your business, to the topics that you talk about mostly on your site. So add links only if they're relevant to the content, and choose anchor text wisely so it matches what's on the target page. Google appears to have an equivalent to domain authority. It's kind of their internal version called site authority. And the authority promotion attribute suggests that it's used to boost site quality scores. That's interesting because over the years, SEOs have developed their own kind of page authority and domain authority, and there's so many different tools and services that offer different types of authority, trust scores, citation scores, all of these different ones. But Google has their own internal one now that we've seen the leak, which is interesting, and obviously we'll keep track of that over time for the site quality. It also tracks links from trusted sources to assess the page's likelihood of being spam. So attributes like trusted demoted or trusted examples and spam probability indicate how it evaluates these different links, and then kind of uses that to factor in the rankings and authority and trust of the page. The tier in which a link's source page is indexed impacts its value. So attributes like source type or the index tier classify links into quality tiers. So according to its kind of proprietary ranking system, any links, when it finds links, it will put them into certain quality class or tier, based on the type of link it is, where it is, etc. And then getting links from that will affect your site or other sites in certain ways, depending on like how high of a tier it is. Again, a lot of this doesn't really explain exactly how it works, but it gives us a hint as to how Google is doing it in the back end, which will help us to kind of refine what we do and kind of think of some strategies how to do our backlinking and our linking a bit better. An action for this would be to combine traditional link acquisition with press release efforts to boost brand awareness and search volumes. It's always good to have a diverse backlink profile from blogs, from industry experts, from news sites, all of these mixed in, rather than just focusing on a very narrow type and then doing just that. Algorithm and indexing. So Google's indexer is actually named Alexandria. Just a fun fact. Makes sense because the Alexandrian library. But yeah, it gave it its own name. And it keeps track of the last 20 versions of a document, potentially allowing manipulation in historical weights. So now that we kind of know the number here, that kind of opens up to the point where people can modify a page, at least to certain to certain level 20 times before the old versions kind of are factored out of the equation. Google might have updated it since that leak because now that everyone knows that, but it's interesting that it kind of has a window of the number of changes on a page and those changes. So the more changes you make over time, that window kind of moves, and the changes you've made in the past before that window kind of get forgotten or aren't factored in. So short content can rank well, because we've always thought that, go for long form content. And yes, long form content is great because it can add a lot of value, but that doesn't mean short content is bad. If it's really valuable and relevant, a lot of people like short content, and that's why, different like social media has flourished because of the short attention spans and all of that. And fresh links from newer pages are more valuable than those from older content, which is interesting because again, there's kind of two schools of thought. Like a lot of people think that really old content is actually way better, but not necessarily. So it kind of breaks some of our beliefs about that. Limiting site types. Google might limit the number of similar types of sites. So the blogs, commercial sites in search results. So that explains why when you do a search in Google, you'll see a mix of different content. You'll see some, e-commerce stores, you'll see some blog posts, you'll see some social media posts on Reddit, for example. There's a mix of different ones. That doesn't mean that that's all there is, because if you keep going and scrolling, going page 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, you'll see a lot others. But basically, Google will, kind of vary it up and limit the number per type. So the action here is to experiment with linking from newer content pieces and also try to create some shorter content that's, maybe more condensed, maybe more concise, while still keeping that value in there, to balance out the long form content that you might have on your site. Algorithm and indexing. So titles have site-wide implications, not just page specific. And this is an interesting one because yes, site titles being relevant to the content is important and it can help with the rankings, but the site titles over the whole website is important because if you think about all the topics, let's talk about like pages as topics because each page focuses on a specific topic. All the topics kind of give an idea of what the page or the whole site is about. For example, if I take website and I literally copy and paste the top 50 pages, the site titles into document, and then I say, what is this website about? I'm sure you could come up with a pretty good idea and estimate. Oh, this is what that page, this is what this site is about. So the quality and relevance of the titles is important, kind of gives a context to what the entire site is about. Google has mechanisms to limit the number of certain content types and SERPs, like I just said. And then the action here would be to optimize the page titles so that they're relevant to the whole website or your business niche. Entities and local search. So entities are central to Google's approach with extensive references to entity resolution and attributes in the documents. So this comes down to basically having, well, Google's knowledge graph and documenting different concepts, ideas, people, places, things like that. So when it evaluates a piece of content, it looks through and kind of like clumps that content into specific relationships in terms of entities. Like, oh, this page is about, I don't know, local SEO and SEO. It's kind of like when you tag up a blog post, you think about, oh, what are the main topics in here? And then you put those tags in. Or when you do hashtags on social media, it's kind of like condenses that into a few words. And entities are like concepts, people, places, things like that. And so it tries to resolve that content into entities and makes it easier to create that relationship. So entity related optimization may often outweigh keyword targeting. So keyword targeting, like specific keyword phrases, that's more early 2000s thing. And as Google developed more and more advanced and its semantic search algorithms, it kind of more ranked the concepts and entities rather than the actual specific keywords. So Google defines an entity as a thing or a concept that is singular, unique, well-defined, and distinguishable. So that's why I always say when you create content, try to make that page around a specific thing or a specific idea, and then create and make sure you don't have any other pages that conflict with that. So make sure it's unique on the entire site. Certain high traffic categories like coffee shops and hotels receive tailored treatment. So this is interesting. So if you have a local business and let's say it's a coffee shop, Google has specific like ranking categories and things it looks at for those types of businesses because it's kind of its own worlds. And so there's different things that it looks for in there. We're not sure specifically how, but it does kind of receive tailored treatment. The action here would be to focus pages around a single concept or specific topic so it's crystal clear to Google what it's all about and also to users. Entities and local search again. So chains and large brands are evaluated differently with unique modules and attributes in the search algorithms. So again, a completely different class of businesses and Google has different ways of measuring those. So it's interesting. It kind of like, it's not like one algorithm fits all. It's kind of one broad algorithm and then sub algorithms for different industries, different types of businesses. Attributes like brick and mortar strength and is large local, triple W info indicate possible influences of Google business profiles on organic rankings and the classification of websites. So if you have a local business, it's important to get your Google business profile set up and make sure it's filled in completely and up to date and relevant, because that will help with your local search rankings. Concepts of citations and data extractions for addresses and business hours from web documents are part of the local search processes. So again, it comes down to basically the citations that you have on directories, even if they're not linked, even if it's just a mention on someone's site about your business name and maybe the phone number or the address, Google will pick that up and see that it's a reference to your business. So set up and complete Google Business Profile if you're a local business, and make sure local citations have consistent and up-to-date information, that name, address, phone number, or NAP for short. Also, the SAFT, or Structured Annotation Framework and Toolkit, and this is something in Google that enhances the entity analysis by performing advanced semantic parsing, annotation, and extraction of entities and their relationships. Basically, this means Google really goes into the content and kind of puts it into little categories, and it creates like relationships to specific entities that it has in its database, and that helps it rank for specific keywords and whatnot. That's why just optimizing it for keywords by just putting in keywords isn't really that good anymore. You need to kind of have a main concept that you're creating that content around, and then be very thorough and go into depth into that and make sure you've covered all aspects of that content piece. And if it's too big, you kind of break that up into separate pages, separate entities. Google stores information about document authors, impacting the quality signal of content. So again, we talked about the authorship of a specific content, and that does impact the rankings. So prioritize hiring reputable writers to enhance the content quality. So if you don't already have specific writers or industry experts writing your content, you might want to consider that to boost the quality of the content. Another action is to tailor your SEO strategies to specific geographical regions if you're a local business, rather than relying on a national approach. Obviously, if you are a virtual business, an online only business, then obviously you can spread out across the country. But if you local, try to create very specific niche local content. Some of the tools that you can start using that's in relation to this Google search leak. I'm going to show you a few examples here. But if we click on, so this is chat with patents and public Google documents. So if we click on that, it will go to, yeah, this one right here. So it's just loading right now. I'm going to load this one, the leak bot. Well, so this is a ChatGPT plugin, and basically you can communicate with the documents that were leaked through ChatGPT, which is really cool. Leak reporting tool. So unlock the secrets of the search algorithms with the reporting tools. You can kind of like enter your research query, and then it'll generate a report from it, which is pretty cool. And then some of the local SEO ranking factors. It's kind of like a spreadsheet here, and you can kind of go through what the document name is, the URL, description of it, and the summary. So this is a really long document, so I'm still scrolling. So you can kind of go through that. The leak modules, so they actually created a specific site for this, 2596, and the number of documents they found. And they can search them. You can click on it, and it'll tell you more about that specific module and learn more about its impact on the algorithm. So that's really cool. And then search ranking factors, again, is kind of similar to that. And it goes through everything there. So you can use the table there once it loads. There's a lot of information on here. But yeah, it's categorized in a table kind of way. So there we go. Really easy. And you can like kind of filter it. You can group information. And it's really simple. So you can kind of go through that. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful. And I'm just going to go over, check the chat here to see if anyone had any questions. Okay, let me see chat. Okay, so Luke, if someone updated a blog post, is it better for them to keep the published date as the original post date, or change it to the date it was updated? Yeah, good question. So I would let's say let's assume you're using WordPress or something. Keep the original like published date, and usually CMS platforms automatically do this for you. So you go in and you edit your post and then you click update. And then most likely in the back end, it will have like an updated date, but it also have the original publication date. And because Google crawls pages and sites so often, it already knows that this was the first time the document or the website page appeared. So it's fine. And then it will see that when it was updated. So it just needs to correlate with that. And it does that automatically. What we don't want, obviously, is for someone to go in there and like try to change the dates because they want it to look more fresh or more recent. That's all. But in most like content management systems like Wix, Squarespace, WordPress, Shopify, all of these ones, if you just use it as is and you update the content, fine. It will automatically, do that in the back end. Kyle, what if your site focuses on tourism from other countries? How would you focus your backlink, context, and content? So I'm assuming here, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kyle, is that you have a website in a country, you have a business in a country, and you're basically providing tourism services for that country to other countries, or is it that or is it multiple countries, or is it a global international thing? I'm just thinking in terms of how it's structured. But let's say you want to optimize content. Again, it comes down to who's your audience. Let's say you have that business in the UK or the US, and your audience is in that country. So for UK or US, people who want to go on a holiday abroad. So ideally, then you would focus your backlink context around you want to build backlinks in that country of the audience, and then basically the keywords can still focus on those destinations. That's fine, but you're targeting the audience in that country. So let's say, I don't know, you're doing a holiday to Australia, tourism in Australia, but it's for the US audience. So obviously you'd build backlinks in the US for that, but it's still targeting, holiday in Australia keywords. All right, Luke, is there a way to tell if a backlink source is a trusted source? If it is not trusted, does this negatively affect your site? Good question. So there's no way to know exactly for sure, but there's different metrics that are really useful. So first of all, is it well known in the industry? Second of all, like you can look at if you go to majestic.com, you can type in the site and it'll tell you a citation and a trust score. And if that score is quite high, that means it's quite credible and authoritative. Again, domain authority doesn't really, it tells you like that it has a lot of backlinks and a lot of, you know, quality links and things like that, but it doesn't really tell you, is this relevant to your site? So you have to kind of look at it from multi angles. Is it relevant? Is it, reputable business? Has it been around quite a long time? Does it get a lot of traffic? And where's that traffic coming from? Is it from their social media, which is, natural? Is it coming from Google? Things like that. So you can kind of gauge by all these different factors whether it's trustworthy or not. And the more of these factors, these good factors it has, the better. There's no like real cutoff point, really. It's kind of like a gray zone where it kind of starts falling into the spam zone or the low quality zone. Josh, can you put those links in the chat? Absolutely. Yes. Thanks for the reminder there. Let me just do that. Oops. Let me do that right now. And then you guys can just copy and paste that into our document or something. There we go. Let me paste that in there for you guys. Okay, Lee, Google measures content effort and significant content updates, and why use Hike AI to produce a blog post? Won't doing that impact the website negatively, even though you are updating and adding content? Yes, so like I said, with all AI content generators and tools, it's not there to be copy paste. It's there to provide some ideas, initial structure, something to start with. And then out of that, you add to it, you change the tone of voice, you add your personal experiences, you add things like that to enhance it. That's where the extra value and the quality comes from. But it kind of eliminates that writer's block where you're staring at a blank screen and you're like, what do I write about? Or how do I start this? So it really helps in that sense where it kind of gets you started. So yeah, it's still incredibly useful in giving you a starting point, but it's not there to kind of copy and paste in that sense. Kyle, specifically, it's hotels in a local market that are trying to attract guests from. Okay, so I misunderstood that. That's okay. So let's say you're a hotel and you're trying to attract from different countries people to stay there. Yeah, so in that case, you create different then you get ideally backlinks from those countries and try to create content in those countries and ideally translate them so that you get traffic from abroad, booking your hotel, and then flying in and visiting that. So ideally, you have multiple languages, depending on what markets you are trying to target, and then creating content around that and backlinks in those countries. Great, cool. All right. Does anyone have any other questions about anything that we covered today? Okay, Luke, if using keywords is becoming outdated, why would using a statement or question on a pillar page, for example, be better? So I'm not saying that you shouldn't use keywords because keywords in essence, like kind of are a way of expressing a concept or an entity. Questions are in itself kind of its own thing because a question is very specific. Although a question can be nested underneath specific topics or specific categories or whatnot. So it depends on how granular you want that content. If it's a very specific question, that can be like a really small content piece, or sit within a bigger content piece, and it can still rank for it in that sense. Like for example, in Google answer cards, you'll pick that out and even maybe feature snippet from that answer in the search bar at the top. So I wouldn't say it's better or worse. You can create content that's very specific, that just answers one small question, or you can create content around one like major topic, and goes really into depth. Hope that answers your question. Anyone else before we wrap up? Oh, sorry, I'm being very specific to WordPress for these questions. Okay, perfect. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, you can be very specific and then create content to answer that specific thing. And it doesn't have to be too long, right? As long as it's useful. And then you can link from, let's say, a parent page, which covers all those topics, and then link down to those individual pages. Kind of like an FAQs portal.